The word was written before sunrise. Arrogant. A young reporter had circled it twice in his notebook after watching Bruce Lee speak the night before. By morning, that same reporter stood outside a locked gymnasium door, hearing footsteps inside at a pace no arrogant man would keep when nobody was watching. The building was a small hotel athletic room rented for a martial arts conference in 1971. It had faded green walls, bad carpet, a stack of folding mats, 2 heavy bags, a wooden bench, and one long mirror that made everyone inside look more honest than they wanted to look. The night before, Bruce had sat on a panel with senior instructors, promoters, and a few local journalists. The subject had been modern martial arts in America. The tone had been polite until one man asked Bruce whether he believed traditional systems were too limited. Bruce answered directly, not rudely, directly. That was enough. He said a fighter should not be trapped by a style, that useful truth mattered more than inherited pride, and that many men defended tradition because it protected their position. The room reacted like a polite table hearing a chair scrape against the floor. Some men called it confidence. Others called it arrogance because confidence is easier to accept when it arrives wrapped in apology. Bruce did not wrap it. He spoke as if he had already tested what he was saying, and untested men often dislike the sound of tested certainty. The reporter, named Alan Reeves in this story, wrote arrogant in the margin. Alan was not malicious. He was young, ambitious, and trained to turn tension into a headline. He had expected a humble immigrant success story. Instead, he heard a man refusing to pretend uncertainty for the comfort of others. A senior instructor named Gordon Hale said what several men were thinking. Hale was fictional, but recognizable. Square jaw, polished shoes, 20 years of teaching, and the calm resentment of a man who believed younger men should prove themselves more quietly. "You speak with great certainty," he said. The room understood the accusation inside the compliment. Bruce looked at him and answered, "Certainty is dangerous if it is borrowed. It is necessary if it is earned." That line ended the polite part of the discussion. Alan underlined arrogant again. Hale smiled without warmth. Several students in the back looked thrilled because they thought conflict was the same as truth. After the panel, the hallway filled with small conversations. One man said Bruce had talent but needed humility. Another said he was too proud of being different. A promoter joked that if confidence could sell tickets, Bruce would be rich by breakfast. Bruce passed by them carrying his jacket and said nothing. That silence was misread too. Arrogant men are often silent because they think others are beneath them. Disciplined men are often silent because not every misunderstanding deserves fuel. From the outside, the two silences can look the same. The difference is revealed later, when no audience remains. At 4:36 the next morning, Alan woke because the hotel pipes knocked in the wall. He could not sleep, so he went downstairs looking for coffee. The lobby was empty except for a night clerk reading a newspaper and a janitor pushing a mop toward the athletic room hallway. Then Alan heard it. A sharp step, a breath, a strike against canvas, silence, another step. Not the noisy effort of a man training for witnesses. It was quieter, stricter, almost private. The janitor looked at the door and said, "He has been in there since before 4. Alan stopped. "Who?" The janitor shrugged. "The little fighter from the panel." Little fighter. The words sounded different at that hour. No crowd, no debate, no quote to print. Just a locked room and a rhythm continuing behind the door. Alan walked closer. Through the small window in the door, he saw Bruce Lee alone. Dark clothes, bare hands, sweat already on the floor, no students, no applause, no mirror checking for vanity. The same man accused of arrogance was repeating one small movement as if he had not yet earned it. That image confused Alan more than any answer from the panel. Arrogance, in his imagination, enjoyed the finished product. This looked like a man suspicious of every finished product. Bruce moved, stopped, corrected his foot, moved again, frowned slightly and repeated the same angle. The long mirror showed the truth clearly. Bruce was not admiring himself. He was inspecting himself. There is a difference. Vanity asked the mirror, "Do I look impressive?" Discipline asked the mirror, "Where am I lying?" Alan watched long enough for the word in his notebook to feel less certain. Inside the room, Bruce struck the heavy bag once. The sound was not wild. It was compact, clean, controlled. Then he paused and wrote something in a small notebook on the bench. He did not look like a man proving he was great. He looked like a man keeping accounts with his own standard. Alan returned to the lobby but did not get coffee. He sat in a chair with the notebook open to the circled word. Arrogant. For the first time, the word looked lazy. It described how Bruce had made other men feel. It did not yet describe who Bruce was when feeling was removed. At breakfast, Gordon Hale repeated the accusation more openly. Your Mr. Lee has talent, he told a table of instructors, but he needs to learn humility. Alan heard it from the next table. Bruce was not there yet. That made the conversation easier for everyone. Hale continued, a man should let others praise him, not praise himself through every answer. One instructor nodded. Another said Bruce was from a new generation that mistook challenge for depth. Alan looked at his notebook and thought about the quiet footwork before sunrise. Bruce entered the dining room carrying a plate, greeted the staff first, and sat alone near the window. He ate simply, slowly, as if no conversation in the room required his reaction. Hale looked at him. Alan saw the look and knew the day was not finished. The morning session was supposed to be practical demonstrations. Each instructor would show one principle and allow questions. Hale volunteered early. His theme was humility through repetition. He made 10 students perform a basic stance and corrected them with firm traditional authority. The lesson was not wrong. That mattered. Repetition can build humility. Basics can clean arrogance from the body. Hale was a good teacher in many ways, but he had begun using humility as a weapon against a man he had not bothered to understand. When Bruce's turn came, he walked onto the mat without drama. Alan noticed the hands first. The knuckles were not swollen from careless force. The fingers moved lightly, alive. The body looked rested enough for public demonstration, but Alan knew it had already worked in private darkness. Bruce said, confidence is often mistaken for arrogance when the work behind it is not visible. The room went still. Hale folded his arms. Alan lowered his pen because he wanted to hear the sentence without turning it into evidence too quickly. Bruce continued, arrogance says, I am above correction. Confidence says, I am ready to be tested. That line reached the students immediately. It also reached Hale, though his face did not admit it. The distinction was too clean to dismiss. Hale raised his hand. And who decides whether your confidence is earned? Bruce looked at him. Pressure, time, correction, the body, not applause. The answer had no decoration. Alan wrote it down, then underlined pressure instead of arrogant. Hale stepped onto the mat. Then let pressure decide. The host looked nervous, but Bruce nodded. This was not an alley provocation. It was a controlled demonstration before students. Bruce could accept because the purpose had changed. It could teach. Hale chose a strong student to attack Bruce with a repeated line. Bruce asked the student to begin slowly. Hale smiled as if slowness proved Bruce needed safety. Bruce saw the smile and did not answer it. He corrected the student's stance first, making him better before using him as pressure. That small act confused Hale. An arrogant man would want the attacker weaker. Bruce made the attacker cleaner. He adjusted the boy's shoulder, set his foot, and told him to strike honestly. Then he turned to Hale. A bad test flatters everyone, he said. A good test helps no one hide. The student attacked. Bruce moved offline and stopped near the ribs. Then he made the student attack again. The second time, Bruce asked him to change rhythm. The third time, change distance. Each correction made the test harder, not easier. Alan saw Hale's face shift. It was not admiration yet. It was inconvenience. The accusation of arrogance becomes harder to hold when the accused man keeps making the test more honest. Pride usually seeks easy victory. Discipline seeks reliable information. Bruce then turned the demonstration on himself. Watch my mistake, he said. The room reacted. Men who want to be worshipped do not invite people to watch their mistake. Bruce repeated the exchange deliberately and showed where his shoulder had moved early on the second attack. He demonstrated the early shoulder again. This tells the opponent before I arrive, he said. If I am proud, I hide it. If I am training, I remove it. Alan wrote that down completely. Hale stopped folding his arms. The room had expected Bruce to defend his confidence. Instead, he exposed the work that made confidence possible. This was not false humility either. False humility begs to be praised for being humble. Bruce did not lower himself theatrically. He simply placed his standard above his image. Hale stepped closer. "You correct yourself publicly?" Bruce answered, "If the mistake is public, yes. If the lesson helps them, yes." He looked toward the students. "A teacher who cannot be seen correcting himself teaches students to hide." That sentence struck Hale because it belonged to his own concern. He had spent years trying to make students honest. But had he shown them enough of his own correction? Or had he made authority look too finished? The question entered his face before he could stop it. Bruce asked Hale to attack next, controlled but sincere. Hale hesitated. The request was respectful, not provocative. He stepped in and attacked with a firm, straight line. Bruce intercepted and stopped near the chest, then stepped back immediately. "Again," Bruce said. Hale attacked differently. Bruce was late by a fraction and said so before anyone else could. "There," he said. "My foot waited for my hand. Wrong order." The honesty disarmed the room more than perfection would have. Hale attacked a third time. Bruce corrected the timing and stopped cleanly. "Better," Bruce said, not to Hale, but to himself. It was almost private, yet everyone heard it. The confidence they had called arrogance now looked like a man measuring himself in public by a standard stricter than their criticism. Alan looked back at the word in his notebook, arrogant. It now felt like a headline written before reporting the story. He crossed it out, not dramatically, just enough that his pen tore the paper slightly. The tear felt appropriate. The demonstration continued. Bruce invited questions, and one student asked whether confidence should be hidden to avoid offending people. Bruce shook his head. "Do not hide strength to make insecure men comfortable," he said, "but do not use strength to make others small. That is the line." That was the adult center of the lesson. Some men call any visible strength arrogance because they are uncomfortable around standards. Other men act arrogant and call it confidence. Bruce separated the two. Confidence serves the work. Arrogance serves the image. Hale asked, "And if others still call you arrogant?" Bruce answered, "Then continue working." The room did not laugh because the answer was too practical. A man cannot control every label. He can control whether the label interrupts the work. Bruce pointed to the heavy bag in the corner. "This morning, before any of you were here, that bag corrected me more honestly than the panel did." Alan looked up sharply. Bruce had known someone might have heard. Or maybe he did not care. Bruce continued, "The bag does not flatter. The mirror does not flatter if you ask the right question. Fatigue does not flatter. Time does not flatter. These are good teachers." Hale looked toward the bag, and for the first time, his expression contained respect without resistance. Then Bruce asked every instructor to show one correction they still practiced personally. The room tightened. This was more dangerous than sparring. It asked senior men to reveal unfinished work. A few smiled awkwardly. Hale understood immediately why the request mattered. The first instructor admitted his balance failed under fatigue. Another admitted his left side was slower. A boxer said his temper ruined his footwork. The admissions changed the room. Students leaned forward, not because their teachers became smaller, but because they became more believable. Hale was last. He stood for a long moment. Then he said, "I correct students faster than I correct myself." The sentence was simple and heavy. Bruce bowed his head slightly. Hale had given the room something more valuable than a perfect demonstration. That was the moment Hale began winning back his own dignity. Not by defeating Bruce, not by proving the accusation, by allowing correction to reach him in public. Adult men understand how hard that is. Authority does not like being seen while it learns. Bruce said, "Good. Now you can teach that." Hale looked at him. No sarcasm, no victory, just a man recognizing useful honesty. Hale nodded. The nod was small, but it changed the temperature of the room. Alan wrote a new phrase in his notebook. Discipline behind confidence. It was not as catchy as arrogant. It would not produce the same sharp headline. But it was truer, and for the first time that weekend, Alan cared more about truth than sharpness. During the break, Hale approached Bruce near the mirror. Their conversation was not theatrical. Hale said, "I judged your certainty before I saw your practice." Bruce answered, "Many men do." Hale expected more. Bruce gave him none. That restraint made the answer easier to receive. Hale looked into the mirror, then at Bruce. "I worry young men will copy your confidence without your work." Bruce nodded. "That is a real worry." The agreement surprised Hale. Bruce continued, "Then teach them to copy the work first." The two men stood in the mirror together, one older, one younger, both less simple than the room had made them the night before. Hale was not merely jealous. Bruce was not merely arrogant. The truth required more discipline than either label. Alan overheard enough to understand his article had changed. The story was not young rebel insults, old guard. It was not arrogant genius silences critics. Those would be easy. The real story was harder. Confidence becomes respectable only when discipline is visible, and discipline becomes stronger when it can be tested. That afternoon, Bruce led a drill called correction under pressure. Each student would perform a movement, receive correction, and repeat without defending himself verbally. The rule was simple. The body answers first. If the correction is wrong, test it. If it is right, remove the mistake. Students struggled immediately. Some explained before trying. Some apologized too much. Some became stiff because being corrected felt like being judged. Bruce stopped them. "Correction is not an attack unless your ego makes it one," he said. Hale watched from the side, then joined the drill. That mattered. A senior instructor standing beside younger students receives correction differently. Bruce adjusted Hale's foot by half an inch. The room held its breath. Hale looked down, tested the angle, and nodded. The students saw it. Their teacher had not become weak. He had become more exact. That is the difference a mature man can show younger men. Correction does not reduce you if your dignity is not built from pretending you are finished. Bruce then asked Hale to correct him. Hale hesitated, then pointed out a moment where Bruce's shoulder rose during a repeated entry. Bruce tested it, felt it, and nodded. Yes. One word. No defense. Alan felt the room become quieter in the best way. That single yes destroyed the accusation more completely than any argument. Arrogance cannot say yes to a real correction without losing its shape. Confidence can. Confidence has enough foundation to accept a sharper tool. The drill became the heart of the conference. Not speed, not a dramatic sparring match. Correction. Men came in proud and left with notebooks full of small repairs. Bruce's confidence no longer floated above the room. It had roots everyone could see. After the session, Alan asked Bruce for a short interview. Bruce agreed only after helping stack mats. Alan noticed that too. Small actions are dangerous to lazy labels. A man too arrogant to listen might still perform courtesy for publicity, but there were no cameras on the mats. Alan asked, "Do you think people misunderstand your confidence?" Bruce smiled faintly. "People misunderstand many things when they see only the result." Alan asked what they should see instead. Bruce pointed to the mat, the repetitions that failed. That answer became the center of the article. Not the successful strike, not the sharp quote, the failed repetitions. Confidence, Alan wrote later, is not always the absence of doubt. Sometimes it is the record of having met doubt every morning and still returned to work. Hale read the article a week later. It did not humiliate him. Alan had enough maturity to write the story without making Hale a villain. It described the accusation, the early morning practice, the public correction, and the moment Hale admitted he corrected students faster than himself. Hale clipped the article and placed it in his office drawer. Not on the wall. The wall was for achievements. The drawer was for reminders. He would read it on days when students irritated him or when a younger instructor spoke with certainty that made him uncomfortable. That is how the lesson continued beyond Bruce. Hale began asking senior students to name one correction they still practiced. At first they hated it, then they respected it. The school became less polished for a while, then stronger. Honest rooms often look messier before they become better. Alan's career changed slightly too. He became slower with labels. Not soft, not afraid to criticize, slower. He learned that a sharp word can be accurate only after the work has been seen. Before that, it may be only the writer protecting his own first impression. Bruce did not know all of that and did not need to. Real influence often happens after the influential man leaves. A standard enters a room, exposes a lazy judgment, and the room must decide whether to return to comfort or begin working. For adult viewers, this is the emotional hook. Many men have been called arrogant for standing straight, speaking clearly, or refusing to shrink. Some were arrogant. Some were simply unwilling to apologize for earned confidence. The difference is the work behind the posture. That is why the story should not flatter arrogance. It should refine confidence. Bruce is not shown as a man above correction. He is shown as a man so committed to correction that criticism from others does not threaten him. That is much stronger. Arrogance fears correction because correction threatens the image. Confidence uses correction because correction serves the work. This distinction gives the episode its adult value. It teaches viewers not to hide strength, but also not to fake it. A fake confident man avoids private discipline. He needs public dominance. He speaks loudly, trains lazily, and mistakes attention for proof. Bruce's confidence looked different at 4 in the morning. It was quiet, repetitive, unsatisfied, and completely free from witnesses. That image should stay central. Bruce alone with the mirror and heavy bag, not performing greatness, inspecting small errors. It makes the title believable. They called him arrogant because they saw the statement. Then they saw the discipline behind it. Discipline is the hidden cost of real confidence. Without it, confidence is credit taken against a debt that will come due under pressure. With it, confidence becomes less about looking superior and more about being prepared to meet the test. Hale began to understand that preparation can sound like arrogance to men who have not seen the preparation. He did not have to like every word Bruce said. Respect does not require agreement with every sentence. It requires honesty about what the other man has earned. That is another mature point. The episode should not turn Hale into a fool. He had real concerns about young men copying confidence without work. Bruce shared that concern. The conflict came because Hale mistook Bruce for the disease instead of recognizing him as a possible cure. Bruce's cure was not humility as performance, it was humility as practice. The willingness to repeat basics, expose mistakes, accept correction, and keep standards high even when nobody's watching. That kind of humility can stand next to strong confidence without contradiction. A man can say, "I know what I can do," and still say, "Show me where I am wrong." That is not arrogance. That is dangerous maturity. Dangerous because it is hard to manipulate. Mature confidence does not need flattery and does not collapse under criticism. The students learned more from that than from any dramatic fight. A fight would have shown who was faster. The correction drill showed what makes a man trustworthy as a teacher. Not perfection, not softness. The relationship to imperfection. Bruce's relationship to imperfection was strict. He did not romanticize mistakes, he removed them. But he did not hide them when showing them could help students. That balance is rare. Some men hide mistakes from pride, others confess mistakes to gain sympathy. Bruce used mistakes as tools. Allen captured that in the final paragraph of his article. He wrote that the confident man in the panel had seemed finished, but the man in the gym before sunrise looked unfinished by choice. That phrase mattered, unfinished by choice. Unfinished by choice is a powerful way to live. It means a man refuses to become lazy inside reputation. He can be praised and still return to basics. He can be criticized and still return to work. Praise and criticism both become weather, not steering wheels. This is why Bruce Lee works as a symbol for strong men. Not because he never faced misunderstanding, but because he did not let misunderstanding define his training. He did not shrink to appear humble. He did not inflate to appear strong. He worked. The next time someone called him arrogant, Allen did not argue. He simply asked, "Did you see him train?" That question became enough. If the answer was no, the label was incomplete. If the answer was yes, the conversation became more honest. Hale also changed how he corrected confidence in young students. He no longer told every bold student to be humble. He asked what work supported the boldness. If the work was absent, he corrected the student. If the work was present, he taught him to carry it responsibly. That is the balance viewers need. Do not crush confidence in the name of humility. Do not excuse arrogance in the name of confidence. Ask for the work. Ask for correction. Ask whether the man can stand a test without needing the room to worship him. The word arrogant never fully disappeared from Bruce's life. Strong men are often labeled by people uncomfortable with strength, but labels lose power when the work behind the man is visible. The work is the witness. The heavy bag in the hotel room became that witness. The mirror became that witness. The notebook on the bench became that witness. Not one of them cared about reputation. They recorded only the truth of repetition. That is why the story's final image should not be applause. It should be the same athletic room after everyone leaves. Mirror streaked, heavy bag still, towel on the bench, notebook open, the word arrogant crossed out on Alan's page. The crossed out word matters. It does not mean Bruce was never sharp, never difficult, never demanding. It means the first label was too small. Adult stories should allow men to be more complex than the easiest accusation against them. Bruce was confident because he worked. He was demanding because he corrected himself. He was direct because softness around truth wastes time. He could be misunderstood because he did not perform false humility for men who preferred comfort. That is not permission for every loud man to call himself disciplined. The standard is stricter. Show the early morning, show the correction, show the willingness to be tested, show the ability to say yes when someone finds a real mistake. If those things are absent, confidence may be costume. If they are present, confidence may be a responsibility the man has earned. Bruce's example forces the viewer to ask which one he is carrying. This makes the episode useful beyond martial arts. In any field, a man who speaks clearly may be called arrogant. Sometimes he is. Sometimes others simply dislike the reminder that certainty can be earned through private work they did not do. The answer is not to become smaller. The answer is to make the work undeniable. Not for applause, not to silence every critic, but so your own confidence has roots deep enough that criticism cannot knock it over. Bruce Lee stood on those roots. Hale eventually saw them. Alan finally reported them. The students felt them in the correction drill. That is how a room's judgment changed, not through a speech defending confidence, but through evidence of discipline. The title is the story in one line. They called Bruce Lee arrogant because they saw the confidence first. Then they saw the discipline behind it, and the word could no longer carry the whole truth. What remained was a better lesson. Do not apologize for earned confidence, but never stop earning it. If you speak strongly, train stronger. If you stand tall, correct deeper. If people misunderstand, let the work answer longer than your mouth. That is masculine dignity without performance. Not shrinking to be liked, not boasting to be feared. Simply building a standard in private and carrying it in public without begging the room to understand immediately. Bruce's confidence made sense because the morning made sense. The sweat before sunrise explained the certainty at the panel. The correction drill explained the sharp answers. The willingness to expose mistakes explained the lack of apology. Hale's change made sense too. He did not become a follower. He became a better critic, which is sometimes more valuable. A good critic does not attack confidence automatically. He asks what supports it. If nothing supports it, he cuts. If discipline supports it, he respects. Alan's crossed-out word became the closing symbol. It is easy to write arrogant when a strong man makes the room uncomfortable. It is harder to investigate whether the discomfort comes from his ego or from the standard he represents. That investigation is the adult work. Look past the first feeling. Look for discipline. Look for correction. Look for whether the man keeps working when nobody's watching. Only then decide what to call his confidence. Bruce Lee did not need the room to like his certainty. He needed his certainty to remain accountable to work. That is why it did not become empty arrogance. It remained connected to pressure, correction, time, and the body. The final lesson is simple. Arrogance refuses to bow to truth. Confidence bows to truth and stands taller afterward. That is what the room saw in Bruce Lee once it looked long enough. The morning after the conference, Hale returned to his own school earlier than usual. He stood in front of the mirror before students arrived and performed the same basic entry he had taught for years. For the first time in a long while, he watched it as if it belonged to someone who could still improve. That was Bruce's indirect victory. Not that Hale praised him, but that Hale trained more honestly because of him. A man who inspires more honest work has done more than win an argument. He has altered the standard inside another man's room. Alan also changed the headline. The editor wanted something sharper, something with conflict. Alan gave him a quieter title. The work behind the confidence. It did not shout. It lasted longer. Sometimes a headline must lose a little noise to gain a little truth. Bruce never asked for a correction to the word arrogant. He did not chase the label. That is important. A man with real confidence does not spend his life demanding that every observer understand him perfectly. He keeps working until shallow labels become too weak for those willing to look. The story should leave viewers with that standard. If you are called arrogant, do not answer only with anger. Ask whether there is work behind your confidence. If there is not, become quieter and train. If there is, keep training anyway, because earned confidence still has to be maintained. Yesterday's discipline can become today's costume if a man stops correcting himself. Bruce understood that. That is why the mirror before sunrise matters more than the panel at night. The panel showed what he believed. The morning showed what he paid for those beliefs. Without the morning, the panel might sound arrogant. With the morning, the panel becomes a man speaking from tested work. That distinction is everything. A strong man should not hide the truth to appear modest, but he must keep paying the price that allows him to speak the truth without becoming hollow. Bruce paid before breakfast. Most people only saw the bill after it had been settled. So the final image is not Bruce winning over Hale. It is Bruce alone, before sunrise, correcting one small mistake nobody else might ever notice. That is where confidence becomes clean. That is where arrogance dies if the man is honest enough to keep working. They called Bruce Lee arrogant because they saw the finished posture before they saw the unfinished work. Once the work became visible, the accusation had to change. Not into worship, but into something more useful. Respect for discipline that made confidence accountable. There was another detail Alan almost missed. On the bench beside Bruce's notebook sat a hotel towel folded with care, not thrown. Small order surrounded hard work. The man accused of arrogance had not treated the room like something owed to him. He trained fiercely and still left the space ready for someone else. That matters because arrogance often consumes rooms. It leaves messes, excuses, and people forced to clean up after its performance. Discipline can be intense without being selfish. Bruce's work had pressure, but it also had order. Even the towel became evidence against the lazy label. Alan put that in his notes too. Not because towels make a man humble, but because details reveal whether a standard lives everywhere or only when the crowd is looking. Bruce's standards seemed to follow him into small things. That frightened the word arrogant more than any dramatic speech. Hale noticed something similar during the second day. Bruce listened to a beginner's question with the same seriousness he gave a senior instructor. The question was clumsy, almost naive. Bruce did not smile at it. He answered the useful part and corrected the confusion without making the boy feel stupid. Hale had seen arrogant men around beginners. They either ignored them or used them as props. Bruce did neither. He gave the boy a clear answer, then made him test it physically. The beginner failed, laughed nervously, tried again, and improved. Hale watched the exchange longer than he expected to. That was another crack in Hale's judgment. A man can speak sharply to experts and kindly to beginners without contradiction. In fact, that may be a sign of real discipline. He knows where pressure helps and where it only crushes. Arrogance rarely makes that distinction. At lunch, one promoter still called Bruce difficult. Alan asked, "Difficult how?" The promoter paused. That pause told Alan a great deal. Sometimes difficult means a man refuses foolishness. Sometimes it means he is rude. Sometimes it means the speaker cannot control him. The word needed evidence. This became Alan's new method for the article. Every label needed evidence. Arrogant needed evidence. Confident needed evidence. Humble needed evidence. Disciplined needed evidence. Bruce had forced the reporter to become more disciplined with language, the same way he forced students to become more disciplined with movement. That is why the story matters beyond martial arts. Men are often judged by the discomfort they create, not by the discipline beneath that discomfort. A strong standard can feel insulting to people living below it. That does not make the standard arrogant. It makes the room responsible. Of course, confidence can become arrogance. Bruce knew that too. That is why he kept correction close. Correction is the fence around confidence. Without it, confidence wanders into pride. With it, confidence can walk tall without losing its way. During the final session, Bruce asked the room to perform one movement they trusted most, then name the condition under which it might fail. The exercise was uncomfortable. Men prefer to present strengths without their boundaries. Bruce made every strength tell the truth about its limits. Hale chose a trusted block and admitted it failed when he became emotionally invested in proving it. That admission landed heavily. It connected technique to ego, which was the real subject of the conference by then. Bruce nodded once. Then the block is not only in the arm, he said. The room understood. A technique can fail because of timing, angle, distance, fatigue, fear, pride, or the need to be right. The body is honest, but the ego interrupts it constantly. Bruce's discipline looked like arrogance to some because it gave the ego very little room to decorate itself. Allen's final notes no longer describe Bruce as easy to like or easy to dismiss. He wrote, demanding, direct, observant, unsatisfied, courteous in small things, severe with falsehood, impatient with wasted motion, patient with real learning. The list was less simple than arrogant. It was also more human. That human complexity is important. The story should not turn Bruce into a flawless saint. He can be sharp. He can make rooms uncomfortable. He can speak with a certainty that unsettles men who prefer softer edges. But the point is not softness. The point is whether certainty is accountable to work. In this story it is. Every strong statement leads back to sweat, correction, repetition, private standards, and willingness to be tested. That is what separates the adult archetype from a loud ego. The adult archetype does not pretend to be small. He simply keeps earning the right to stand tall. Hale's final words to Bruce were not an apology exactly. He said, "Your confidence is expensive." Bruce smiled faintly. "It should be." That was the best summary of the weekend. Cheap confidence is everywhere. Expensive confidence is built before sunrise. Allen used that line near the end of the article. Expensive confidence. It gave readers a way to understand what they had not seen. The price was repetition, correction, fatigue, honesty, and the refusal to hide mistakes behind reputation. When the article came out, some readers still called Bruce arrogant. That was inevitable. A written story cannot force every reader to look deeper, but the people who had been in the hotel gym knew the word was no longer enough. They had seen the bill paid. The final memory belongs to Allen. As he left the hotel, he passed the athletic room one more time. The door was open. The mats were stacked. The mirror reflected an empty room. On the bench, the towel was gone, the notebook was gone, and the heavy bag hung still. The room looked ordinary again. That made the lesson stronger. Discipline does not always leave dramatic evidence. Sometimes it leaves only a cleaner space, a corrected movement, a crossed-out word, and men who will be slower to judge the next time confidence enters without apology. So the accusation becomes the hook, but not the truth. They called Bruce Lee arrogant because confidence is easy to resent when the work behind it is hidden. Then they saw the discipline, and the better men in the room had to become more disciplined with their judgment. That is the mature payoff. Not everyone became a fan, and not everyone had to. Worship is not the goal. The goal is a sharper distinction. Arrogance refuses correction. Earned confidence invites it, survives it, and grows taller because of it. Bruce Lee's example in this episode is simple and difficult. Stand in your earned confidence, but keep your door open to truth. Do not shrink for insecure men. Do not perform greatness for applause. Work until your confidence has roots, then keep working so those roots do not rot.